Hey everybody, welcome back to a 40k journey. My name is Nate, and today we are going to be working on Grey Knight Neophytes. These guys show up in a order of battle in the 8th edition codex, but they're not actually in the army list, and I haven't seen anyone else tackle these. If you know of someone who has, please let me know in the comments. But I got to thinking, what would a Grey Knight Neophyte look like? I didn't think it would be a Space Marine Scout, because the Grey Knights don't field Scouts. And they don't actually throw Grey Knights into battle until they're full-fledged Grey Knights. So I kind of figured they'd still have their helmet, they would still have the Stormbolter, the Nemesis weapon, chapter iconography. So, why bother training on weapons you're never going to use? So kind of figured I would strip down some Grey Knight armor. I use sprue goo to take out the lettering, the inlays in the armor, and I used my hobby knife to shave off any inquisitorial iconography or skulls either on the belt plate or on the back of the backpack. And yeah, I just thought he would look pretty cool in some training armor. And I started with a base of Iron Warriors, a wash in Nuln Oil, and then a dry brush in Ironbreaker. I left out the True Silver Bluing because I didn't want him to be in, full 100% battle-ready Grey Knight armor. He's still in training. But I think these came out pretty well. And I'm excited to go through how to paint one with you. We'll be going over the weapon, the Nemesis weapon, next time, because painting Nemesis weapons and power weapons, that's a whole other bag by itself. But everything else, including the trinkets, I think that's a weapon auto sanctifier, I left on. And I left him as purity seals because I kind of figured, he'd want those just to give him any little extra bit of protection he could get along with the rest of his armor and weaponry. So, without further ado, let's get to it. This example already has the armor. He's already got his base of Iron Warrior, the Nuln Oil wash, and the dry brush of Ironbreaker. Starting off with the red parts here, and there's quite a bit of red on here. Purity seals and the book border. Using Mephiston Red for these, because it's a nice kind of medium red that I think looks pretty sharp and is pretty close with how you would see these red parts painted on a full Grey Knight and in the Codex. And I do really like the studio paint scheme for Grey Knights. I think it's pretty sharp. So, looking good. All right, and while we are waiting for that to dry, we're going to use our Leadbelcher to go over the magazine in the Stormbolter and the parts that are going to stay metallic. The case of the Stormbolter is going to be painted with Corvus Black, but you want to paint Leadbelcher here first so that you can be a little bit faster, a little bit less delicate with it, and not worry about having to repaint your black over it. Now we are painting the gold parts using Retributor Armor. I think this is a nice kind of medium gold color. And we're going to do parts of the sword, the scroll work on his left leg and right shoulder. And a little bit on the chapter icon on his left shoulder as well. Parts of that sword are gold as well. Now, we actually go back to the Stormbolter and the haft of his Nemesis weapon. We're going to paint those with Corvus Black. And I like using Corvus Black instead of a darker black like Abaddon Black, just because I think it's a little bit more friendly for highlighting. I mean, yeah, sure, you can highlight Abaddon Black, but Corvus Black has just a little tinge of blue, and it's a bit more towards the medium, and I think takes highlighting with Mechanicus Standard Gray a bit better. Okay, Now we're moving into a little bit of shading. We are going to use Darkoath Flesh to shade in the seals on the purity seals, on the wax. You just want to get a little bit of shade, a little bit of shadow in there, particularly on the purity seals that have skulls in them. All right, simple, easy. Now we're shading the gold parts with Agrax Earthshade. You can use Darkoath Flesh on this too, but for my money, I think the Agrax works a little bit better. I think it looks a bit nicer, a bit more natural. Okay, doing good. Now we're using some Administratum Grey to fill in the gaps in the armor, the joints. You can just leave these silver if you want, but for my money, painting them in looks a lot better. It helps to break up the silver outline of the Grey Knight's armor and makes it more interesting, I think. All right, now we are highlighting our red. We're using Evil Sunz Scarlet for this. You just want to dab little bits on the outside. It's kind of easy to go overboard here. So just take your time and go slow. Be careful. And this is going to look fantastic when it's done. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. You can use a brighter red to highlight again if you want, but I don't think it's necessary. But now we're moving on to the scroll work and using Zandri Dust as a base. It's a nice kind of medium-ish tan that I like. All right, now moving on, we are going to use some Balthasar Gold here to paint in the shells in the Stormbolter magazine. I mean, yeah, you could leave them unpainted or leave them silver colored, but it just doesn't look that good, and it's a small detail. It only takes a minute, and it's really going to help make your model look better. So now we are highlighting the scroll work and the paper on the tome with Morghast Bone. And you can use a brighter bone color like Ushabti Bone for this if you want, or go over it again with Ushabti Bone, but I don't know. I like the idea of these scrolls being a bit older, like on older training gear that's been passed down through generations. So I think a little bit darker scroll work or a little bit darker paper here is appropriate. All right, now we're using Nuln Oil to add shade into the mechanical parts of the Stormbolter here. And yeah, you could just leave it be with its base layer of Leadbelcher, but again, it's filling in these shades, the darker tones, that I really think is going to help your model go to the next level, help it stand out. And we're using the same Nuln Oil for the armor joints here. Okay, now we are going in and basing the eyes, or the lenses, with Talassar Blue. It'll flow pretty well, so you just need a little bit in there, not a whole lot. It'll do the job. All right, now we are highlighting the bolter shells with Brass Scorpion. Again, not a strictly necessary step, but I think it adds to the model and it's going to look pretty sharp. And we're doing the same thing, highlighting the gold parts. We're using Auric Armor Gold. You can use a silver color for gold highlights if you want. I see the Studio Scheme do that frequently, but for my money, I think highlighting gold with a brighter gold just looks better. But totally up to you. It's your model. So paint it however you want it. This is just how I did it. Now we're going in to do some edge highlighting with our Mechanicus Standard Gray on the Stormbolter and the haft of his Nemesis Force sword. Just edge highlighting, that's all we need here. Nothing too involved. All right. Now we're going in with our Micron .003 Sepia Pen to fill in the scroll work. And again, you don't want to be too regular. You don't want to go all the way to the edge, and you don't want to just draw straight lines across because that just looks bad. It doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like actual text on the parchment, and that's what we're going for. Okay, looking good. Now we're going back to the eyes with Teclis Blue, and we just want to fill in most of what we did with the Talassar Blue. We don't want to go all the way to the edges because that will take out the nice shading around the periphery of the lens. So we just want to get most of the lens filled in. And then we're going to be coming back in with our Baharroth Blue and doing just about half of the eye, kind of the inner half towards his nose. And we don't need a lot here, just a bit. If you don't go halfway up the lens, that's fine. Last touch, just need a dot of white scar in the far side. Whoops, a bit too much. I'm going to have to spend a little time taking this out. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Just one little dot in the farthest point of the lens next to his ear. Now, just coming in with our, again, Micron 003 Sepia Pen to try to add some lettering. There you have it. So thank you for joining me for another episode of 40K Journey. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon.